You're listening to the Slaying Self-Doubt podcast with Coach Felicia, where we empower Black women to overcome their doubts, fears, and insecurities in order to give birth to their God-given purpose. Join me and sometimes some of my friends on our journey as we remind you that you are not alone. I'm Felicia Wallace, and together we will find our fears and slay them. Welcome back to another episode of the Slaying Self-Doubt podcast. I am here with Carla George from Pushed into Purpose. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning, Felicia. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, you are so welcome. I'm so glad that we're going to be able to have this conversation. First of all, I already knew that when I was reaching out to you that the name of your business is in alignment with what it is that God has called me to do. So I was like, oh, I already know this is going to be a great conversation because we are trying to do the same thing. We're trying to help people walk
Mm,
into their God given purpose and do it ourselves, right? Like we're
yes.
we're doing it in the midst of it. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I am Carla George and I hail from Bermuda. And my brand is called Pushed into Purpose, as you have mentioned. And that involves a podcast called Pushed into Purpose. In addition to that, I have services which include a 7-week accelerator course and other services for women of faith who are entrepreneurs to basically get their business off the ground and be successful in it. My journey started, I want to say, in my 20s, where I was just really, just trying to do this adult thing, right?
Mm-hmm,
Had been to school, did everything that I thought I was supposed to do. And now here I am, a working woman. And I really started to feel the pressures of the world, like the expectations that were put on me as far as being successful in my career, thinking about marriage, thinking about having children,
yeah.
buying a home, all these sorts of things were just basically being pushed on me.
Mm,
And one thing I realized was like, you know what? No matter what I do, I'm never going to live up to the expectations of other people.
mm,
And I'm really going to miss them, going to fall short. And I was, because I started to do things that people expected of me, but I wasn't happy. And it was in that moment that God really spoke to me about, listen, it's time for you to set all those things aside and really do the things that I have called you to do. And the reason why my brand is called Push into Purpose is because, Felicia, if you know, I don't know if you're like me, but I'm a little bit hard headed,
yes.
stubborn. So I really wasn't trying to do the things of God at that time, but He
Listen.
just literally pushed me into these different areas. So it first started out with my book, which is called The Proverbs 31 Woman More Than the Good Wife. And then the podcast came, and then I'm hosting summits, and then I'm having this business. So it just all started to snowball once I said, you know what? Okay, I'm going to surrender to what God is calling me,
Mm.
or maybe I'm not, and maybe he's gonna push me into it, and let's just see what happens. But I'm just so grateful to where it has turned out and how it has turned out, and just the different women I've been able to impact through it.
I know exactly how you feel. I have been there. I am currently there. And it really is the part that really stuck out to me was when you said that you were doing a lot of things to be able to it seemed like you were appeasing other people, what other people say that you should do or where they think that you should be or how your life should look, right? And people mean well, right? And but the problem is that if we start walking down someone else's path, like it goes against what it is that God wants us to do, and it's scary, right? Because we trust the people that we know or the people that know us to be like, those people wouldn't deter me. And even with that, it is some comfort in knowing that okay, someone else sees an end to whatever this is versus surrendering fully to God is scary because you don't see the other side of it. You are literally day by day, moment by moment, like, are we going in the right direction? Is this what we're supposed to be doing?
And that's just it is, and it's like you want to hold on to that, right? You want to
Mm-hmm.
maintain that control. I mean, we saw that with the children of Israel. They would not let go of that control. They just really wanted to be in control of everything, which is why they were in the wilderness for so long because they refused to completely surrender.
Yeah.
And that's how we can be sometimes. Sometimes our journey can take longer than it needs to because of our own doing.
Mm, mm, mm.
Just being completely transparent and honest. Like when I was doing my own thing and listening to everybody else, I realized once I was finally walking in my purpose, I was like, man, I could have been doing this like 10 years ago. Like I felt like I wasted so much time, but it really was just all a lot of learning lessons and character building moments to get me exactly where God wanted me to be.
Yeah. And nothing happens by accident, right? Like you said, all the things that happen were intentional. The thing about it is that I felt the same way. Could you have been there sooner? You could have, but would you know what you know? You know what
Exactly.
I mean? If you were there, you would. There's still some things that we have to learn, and even as we're walking in purpose, there's still things that we have to learn because I'm sure, just like for me, it may resonate with you as well that even in this, there's times where you be like, okay, God, I got it. I think I know what you want me to do. And and then you be like, oh, no, that's okay. And you got to start over. And then you got to really get yourself back in making sure that you don't go ahead of him. Right. And like you said, that control is where it's like, I feel like I want to go this way. And he's like, that's not the direction that we're going.
Or
Which can
sometimes
be,
they like, go ahead. And
yeah, yes,
that's where you don't want to be. But it's just like, oh, okay, that's what you want to do. All right, I'm gonna take my hands off it. You go right along ahead, as we say now.
yes. We definitely don't want that. So, in your journey, how has self doubt shown up?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it showed up. I mean, it still shows up to this day too, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
but when I was initially on my journey with writing the book, I was completely confused because it was never something that was like on my bucket list. When you're younger, you're like, okay, I want to do this. I want to get married at this age,
Yeah.
children, have this job. Writing a book was not one of those things. And when God spoke to me, I was really nervous because I felt I was bringing the word to people, but I didn't feel like I had the qualifications to do it. I
Mm.
hadn't, gone to seminary or theology school, anything like that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, Lord, I'm really just relying on you to speak this word through me.
Mm-hmm.
And what would people say? How would I be criticized? Would people be like, well, who does she think she is? So all of those things were running through my mind. And he led me to the scriptures, Second Corinthians 3, 4, and 5. And it basically just speaks to how God has qualified us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you can have that moment where he just completely switches everything on for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a God moment. And that's where you want to move because if it's outside of yourself, outside of your comfort zone, that's really where you want to be because you're completely trusting God in that moment. And that's what I had to learn. I was just like, man, this self doubt thing it was getting to me almost to the point where I didn't want to put the book out initially. I
Mm.
didn't want to put the podcast out or do the summit. I know I go through certain emotions when I get to that point, and I have learned to just recognize it and say, okay,
Yeah.
just chill, like just completely let go of why you feel like you need to even have that sort of validation, right?
Mm.
Or
Yeah.
why you feel like you need to have somebody else to qualify you when it's not people that need to validate you and qualify you, it's really God. And then when I was really thinking about it, I was like, no, Carla, you were actually being validated, but you probably weren't being validated by the people you wanted to be validated by.
Hmm.
But there were people out there really rooting for you and supporting you. And I was overlooking that and concentrating on the few who weren't.
Wow. That's a
And
word right there, Carla. That
yeah.
is a word.
Amen. And that could have derailed me, completely. Like it had made me to sit with that. I had to really sit with that and say, why do I need this specific part of society or this specific person to validate what I'm doing? And I just had to get to the point to just let it go and
Yeah.
focus on what God had put before me. And that's how we can be, right? We a lot of times, especially as women, we're not present in the moment
Mm.
God has given us right now. We're always
Yeah.
looking towards either the next or the other or whatever it may be. And God's like, enjoy what I've given you right now. You've
Yeah.
out on so much. And living, you asked me before we got on, is Bermuda beautiful, etc. And living here all my life, yeah, I can tend to overlook that. I can take it for granted
Yeah. Yeah.
because I see it every day. It's right in front of me every day. But I have been more intentional about saying, yes, it is beautiful. And I go out and I do walks and I walk on the beach and do trail walks now just to appreciate what I have right
What
in
you
front of
already
me.
have,
What I
man.
already have. Like, I don't need to look for it outside of here. It's right here in front of me. So that's what I'm trying to apply to my life as well. Like, how to enjoy the moment that God has given you right now, that, He's qualified you, He has validated you, He has given you the support that you need. You just need to be bold and stand on it and move forward in it.
Listen, Carla, when I tell you, I always tell people when I am doing these interviews, I know that God is sending me the right people at the right time to have the conversation that I needed to hear. That, and I know that I always say that these interviews they are definitely for the audience, but they are really for me, right? They are encouragement, they are inspiring, but it's literally God saying, "I got you," and I'm sending you this person to tell you this is where this is why you need to continue to trust me, right? And just like you were saying, like we having to have that honest conversation with yourself about why you when self-doubt comes up, why we give into that part of it. Why do we need the validation? Some of it is just like you said, like you're not honoring the people who are supporting you. You're looking for, so you're looking way ahead, right? Or you're looking at what other people have, and that's that whole comparison thing. And why is it? And it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't start off that way, right? It doesn't start off in a way that you're like, well, why did they do this and they got that. It doesn't, it's not an initial thing, but eventually you find yourself there because you're not focused on the things that God is setting right in front of you. And that being intentional about appreciating where you are right now, because we'll never get another time like this. So there will be another day like today, right? And so being present in what's happening right now, and what's going on around you. I've had the same thing, living right outside of Washington, D.C., we have millions of people who come and visit, right? And I've had people ask me, like, do you know where such and such monument is? I'm like, probably. Like, I don't know because guess what? I'm so used to seeing it. I'm so used to being around it. I did it my entire life that, and sometimes I just am like, that's here. Like you don't even realize, but the fact that other people they're traveling literally, the same thing with Bermuda. You're traveling from all over the country to visit what you already have access to.
Yeah, and that's even including ourselves too, right?
Yes.
Sometimes we have these qualifications and characteristics that other people are seeking in us, and we don't even recognize that we have it. And there's always other people trying to pull it out of us, and
Hmm.
what? No, I just do this little thing. Like
Yeah.
the women I work with, it just, and that's nothing. It's just this little project that I'm working on. Oh, it's just this little book that I wrote, or this
Oh man,
podcast that
Carla.
I have. And we're like, but that little thing that you do brings so much value to people who have no idea how to do it. And I think we underestimate our value,
Mm.
start just taking what we do for granted and looking at it at this little thing, not realizing that God is growing that little thing into this grand thing that is helping so many other people. Like the gifts that we have are not meant for us to hold to ourselves, it's
Come
meant
on.
to share with the world.
Yeah.
Like God wants us to like pass the gift, that
Yeah.
you play that game, pass the gift around. Like
Yes.
he wants you to pass the gift because you're blocking other people from receiving the blessing when we don't recognize all that God has blessed us with.
Yes. Oh man. So y'all, look, we just in the beginning of this, and I know that y'all have already been like, "That's a word. That's a word," because I have been like this when I listen back to this. I'm going to have to write down some of these things because you are preaching over here, sis. Okay. So what have you learned about yourself during this journey that you didn't know before? Y'all know the story. This podcast was an assignment from God that had my self doubt and limiting beliefs telling me that nobody would listen. But you, yes, you, kept showing up every week to listen to this podcast. And because you keep showing up, so do I. If you enjoy this podcast and would love to support me and future episodes, please consider making a donation by simply purchasing me a coffee. If you would like to donate, click the Buy Me a Coffee link. Now, back to the show.
Oh man. I well, that's a heavy question because I think I continuously learn more and more about myself every day.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the biggest lesson was for me to take time to just sit with myself and really tune into the voice of God,
Mm.
because I found that I was able to do it in quiet settings. But I remember having the conversation with my aunt, and I was telling her, I'm just really taking time to listen to the voice of God and these quiet moments, etc. And she said to me, Carla, that is great, but you also need to exercise listening to him and understanding his voice and knowing his voice so clearly that when the noise is there, you could pick out his voice in the
Mm.
crowd. And I was like, wow. So it is teaching me to take my listening ear to another level amongst the noise, amongst the crowd, amongst the confusion. I need to be able to discern the voice of God the same way we can do it with our spouse, with our children, in a midst, of a crowded area. If I don't have children, but I've heard that, when a child calls out mommy,
Yeah.
if there's
Yeah.
10 mommies in the room, your child's voice in
Yeah.
all that confusion. So that's where I'm finding myself right now, is saying, okay, when this self-doubt arises, when these insecurities arise, I need to understand that that isn't the voice of God.
Mm.
Amongst all that confusion that's going on internally, I need to know that God's voice would not say that to me.
Yeah.
That's
Mm.
not his will for my life. His will for my life is to give me a good future, right?
Yeah.
It's not to harm me. It's not to hurt me. It's not to make me feel less than. So I have to ensure that I am negating that negative voice with the voice of God and
Yeah.
everything that He has promised for us. That yes, I am chosen. I am set apart. I have a future and ahead of me that is good. I am qualified. I am validated. I am on assignment here for God. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Once I put those things above everything else, then I know that I'm making those steps towards my assignment and towards completing my assignment. And one thing that God also told me is that when you continue to put that self doubt ahead of you, that imposter syndrome, that insecurity, what you're actually doing, you're making those idols over me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because anything that you're worshiping before me is an idol, right?
Mm.
So if I'm waking up or if I'm about to do a presentation and the first thing I'm doing is like, oh my gosh, can I do this? Am I, do I look okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sound okay? What are people going to think? Those are all idols because I'm thinking about myself before
Mm-hmm.
thinking about the impact that God wants me to have.
Yeah.
So I try to start off with, okay, God, you have called these people to me. You have ordained this moment. You are not going to make me look crazy. I didn't.
Right.
So I'm trusting you in this moment, and whoever this message is for, they are going to receive it. I have to be okay that I am not for everybody, and
Yeah.
that's okay. Like we
Yeah.
are not for everybody, because if we were, I couldn't allow you to do what you do. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
If I'm trying to
Absolutely.
always be there for everybody, or while I'm not being chosen, how am I allowing my other brothers and sisters in Christ to have their moment and to walk in their purpose?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. One of the things that I love that your aunt told you of being able to, which I think is so important, right? When you're on this, purpose driven journey or your self doubt journey, that you have to be able to hear God in the midst of the noise, right? It's easy for us to go into our closets, get in the car and turn the radio down to, have our quiet time. But when you start walking in your purpose, you will have noise. It doesn't necessarily, sometimes it's not. When we talked earlier about other people giving us ideas and other people, sharing with us, they have good intentions. But if you're doing if you're walking in your God-given purpose, you have to be able to hear him in that. And a lot of times I can say for me that those have been times that I've gotten caught up, right? Because I was hearing everybody else's voice except for his. And you sharing that today just reminded me that there was a period of time that I could hear God's voice above everybody, right? But what happens is that you get so caught up in yourself that this is again back to this control thing that you're trying to figure it out. And oh, this person told me this, or I heard this on a podcast, or I heard this on a sermon, or I heard this. And it's like, yeah, those are the vessels that God may be using, but what did you hear from him? And if
Yeah.
you can't remember what he told you, then we got a problem.
I mean, this is it because, like you said, you could get caught up, right? And sometimes there will be opportunities for either collaborations or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
have certain people on my podcast or to do different events with people. And initially, I'm like, wow, this is such a great opportunity. But then something would happen where it wouldn't work out, or I just feel like, okay, I don't know. Let me continue to watch. Let me
Yeah.
watch
Yeah.
and pray, right? And then eventually I realize, you know what, this is not the right opportunity. Even though it looks good,
Mm-hmm.
it's not of God, and I can't be involved in that, and it's not to say that I'm above anybody or anything like that. It's just that where I'm going right now with God, I have to ensure that I'm aligned with His will for my life
Yeah.
and just be happy, that people are doing amazing things. But sometimes it's not always great for us to collaborate with, everything that we see
Yeah.
there. And as much as it may hurt, the money might look good,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the matches may look good, all of that. But sometimes it's not good for us. It's not
Yeah.
good for where God wants us to be.
And that's so true because a lot of times that what happens is that we don't see, because we don't see the end, right? We don't know that one collaboration or that one connection to somebody else, that it seems like it's okay for us, how that may trip us up down the road, right? I'm always, when I started this, I'm like, this was not an assignment I wanted. It did not come from me. I did not think of it. I was like, this was a God assignment. And because I know that, everything that I do, it has to come from him. And if it doesn't, every single time that it has not come from him, it's always messed me up. So I literally am the same way. Like, if being as though this is his assignment, whatever is connected to slaying self-doubt has to be in alignment with what it is that he wants for me, for my life, and for the people who are going to be connected to slaying self-doubt in the future. And when you're another thing that you said about trying to do it all right and try to serve all the people, that you may miss the mark because you're not allowing space for the person next to you to do what they need to do, and to give out their gift and whatever it is that God put on their heart um, to be able to put out into the world. And I also, with that being said, and I'm sure in both of our walks and doing this, understanding that us walking in our God-given purpose is connected to somebody else. And so if we don't do our work and we don't do the things that we are supposed to be doing, then it doesn't even allow the person who's connected to push in the purpose, or the person who's connected to slaying self-doubt, to really walk in their purpose, because we sitting over here worried about, all the wrong things.
Exactly. Like we're just, that's when you realize, okay, you know what, I'm not doing, it's something's not right here. And the thing that with you saying that, when you was talking about that, I was like, yeah, every now and then, I don't know about you, but I feel like, why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be the doubt again. And I feel like I shouldn't go any further. Maybe
Yeah.
let me just give it up. But always, Felicia, I could tell you, every single time that happens, I would get an email from
Yes.
I get a message. Thank you so much for
Mm-hmm.
continuing to just walk in your purpose. Something you said today really impacted my life
Yeah.
or had me change the way I thought about something. And I'm just like, all right, God, I see.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see. And it's just really just that one person. And that's all that really matters. We don't have to always be so concerned about, being that influencer that has
Mm-hmm.
a million followers or, 1,000, 50,000 followers or what have you, and you're not making an impact on one person.
Yeah.
And that one person, you don't know. Like I teach my ladies, I say that one person could go on to impact millions
Yeah.
because you were obedient in your calling. That's
Yeah.
the millions that you impact. It's
Yeah.
directly from you, but it's vicariously through you, right?
Mhm.
And so just keep that in mind that you don't know whose life you could have saved today because you were obedient to your calling.
Mhm.
Know who needed to hear your message or needed your service because you were obedient to your calling. And resting or I should say, loathing in this state of, misery and pity, um, is really blocking what we can and who we can be to so many others.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so so true. And yes, I have been in that place where I was like, okay, God, I'm done. This is this is it. Oh, this delay. I don't know how you gave this to me, who you gave it to.
It's
Just
like, why me?
yeah, I'm just like, I'm good. And then, like you said, you get a text message or you get an email or someone purchase your services or someone that reaches out and say, hey, I happen to find your podcast. So you be like, what? Like you said, that one is enough to be like, okay, God, I see. Because he knows that this is tough work. He knows that when you're walking in purpose, it ain't what a lot of people, it goes against the grain, right? It goes against what's normal because we're not operating in the same realm as everybody else who has a boss and has you go into a certain job every single day. And because I've had that, I know the difference. Like, it's one thing to be like, okay, no, this is like the supreme, like this is literally God is telling me what my next move is, and nobody else around you understands that, right? And so it is a sometimes it can be a lonely walk, right? Because even when like even in this collaboration of us talking to each other, what God downloads in you is different from what God downloads in me, right? And so we may be walking the same and we may have the same intentions, but it's still lonely because he's only talking to me.
Right.
and
Right.
and and you have to be mindful about what you say, what you share, because you don't know when. Even if he gave it to you, is that supposed to be now or is that 5 years from now? Like, where we where in the timeline is this supposed to happen, Lord? I'm not really sure. So no, I definitely get that. So let's talk about pushed into purpose. So you've written a book, you have coaching, you also do a podcast. Like, let's talk about all things pushed into purpose.
Sure. So earlier I had alluded to it how, I really wanted to provide a space where women of faith, especially busy women of faith, were getting these downloads from God, right? These
Mm-hmm.
ideas, these visions and these dreams, but they just didn't launch. They didn't move forward for whatever reason. It could be lack of time, lack of support, resources, finances, or what have you. And for me, I said, you know what? If I was feeling this, where I was doing everything for everybody else, but never pursuing the things that God had given to me, and feeling I wasn't walking in my true purpose,
Mm-hmm.
I was feeling unfulfilled, I was feeling tired, overwhelmed. I knew I wasn't the only one feeling like this. And then when I talked to other women, they would be like, yeah, got my career, whatever, but I'm just unfulfilled. But, but if we start talking about things that they were passionate about, oh my goodness, they would go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, well, why you haven't, pursued that? And then it become the excuses or just whatever barriers there were. So my program, which is a 7-week program, it allows women to really have a strategy to take that idea from off the paper and launch, get to a point where they actually launch, whether it's a ministry, a business, a program, whatever it is that God has given to you within 7 weeks, because 7 is the number of completion.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
addition to that, it aligns with purpose. So we deal with purpose for prayer and meditations, understanding who we are, recognizing the resources that we need, planning out our strategy, then overcoming obstacles, setting a launch date, and then finally executing. So that's what the 7 week program is about. And in addition to that, yes, I do have the podcast, which comes out every Monday ish. Let's just be real. Sometimes I just get to it, but every Monday ish, and we talk about right now we're in the season of turning our purpose into profit and how it is okay to profit from your purpose.
Mm.
As women of faith, we kind of feel like a little weird about it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
make profit so weird, and I'm trying to get away from that stigma and to say, you know what, if God has given it to you, He wants to give you provision as well. He wants you to prosper in this season, and it's okay for you to do so.
Yeah.
When we prosper, others prosper as well. We're able to give more if we have more. So it's really we're in a season of turning our purpose into profit, and I've interviewed several women who are doing that, and it just had different solo shows as well. So thank you for asking me about it. Yeah, because it's something that I really enjoy doing. I love seeing women just really coming out of their shell and being excited about what God has given to them, and then
Yeah.
finally being able to finally see it come to fruition.
Yeah, it is really freeing, right? And I think that when you, like you said, when they're talking about what they want, but when you start talking about the passion, you know that there's a light switch that went off, right? And
Yes.
they're like, this is what I really would want to do. This is what I'd really want to be connected to. And this is what I like. I always say your purpose is the thing that you would do for free over and over and over and over again. Which is why when you mentioned purpose, what you say, purpose into profit,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, which is why it's difficult, right? Because some most of the stuff that we're doing, we're already doing it for free. So it doesn't seem like work, right? And so it feels like you said weird to be like, but I already do that and I don't charge and I don't that's a whole nother conversation, Carla. We have to have on a
I was, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, that whole, that mind block, that mindset thing, and trying to overcome that, it's a whole other conversation.
It absolutely is. That is something that I can definitely say I have struggled with in, transitioning to full-time entrepreneurship because again, you're getting your direction from somewhere else and it seems crazy. Or you like, what? This is that what you want me to do? But it really is like it's just about believing and surrendering and knowing that God has you, He's got you covered. And if He gave it to you, trust me, He gonna see you all the way through it.
Exactly. Exactly.
So one of the questions I have asked yesterday and before is when you are having kind of these moments of self-doubt or insecurities, what are some practical steps that you do now to try to get yourself through that if it happens to come up, like when you did your summit or even when you're podcasting or just anything?
So the thing that I do is, I know it probably sounds so simple, but I really just put things in place to where I take the steps to execute. And I make sure that I set aside time, be intentional about it, about pursuing the thing that God has set before me. Because if I sit on it, it's just never going to get done. So when I'm about to, launch something like a program or my summit or write a book, I set time usually early in the morning to where I have an hour where I'm in communion with God and just writing down the ideas, writing down the steps, how
Mm,
to completely execute. Before, I mean, a lot of us have these to-do lists, right? Things that we want to check off, to-do lists, et cetera, et cetera. But what I've started to do now is write a legacy list. And
mm,
that is, okay, what are the things that I need to do to ensure that my legacy is solidified? How do
wow.
I want to be remembered? What do I want to leave behind for my community, for my family? And what do I need to do to ensure that that happens, right? So that's part of my legacy list. So it is the podcast, it's the summit, it's the program. All right, what do I need to do to ensure that these things are being executed in a timely manner? Or if they need to be revamped, stopped, whatever the case may be, I ensure that what I do, the things that I work on are leaving a legacy that I know that God would be pleased with. So I got rid of the to-do list and I now implement my legacy list and ensure that I am executing that list, ticking the boxes that, to ensure that basically I'm leaving the legacy that God has assigned to me.
I love that. That definitely changes things because when you think of a legacy list, immediately I thought about my kids and my kids' kids, right? And um, my family that's going to be attached to me versus, like you say, a to-do list. It's like, what do I need to do for me today
Yeah,
versus what's going to go on beyond me?
exactly.
Yeah, that is. I thank you. Thank you for that.
Because the to-do list, we could easily skip that list because
Which we do often.
we do often because we're like, "Oh, okay, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. It's not as important." But when you think about, okay, you know what, I'm leaving a legacy for my children. In your case, this is super important,
Yeah.
and I cannot disappoint them.
Yeah. And that it changes things because even when you're walking in your purpose and you realize, even when we start this, right, we think of ourselves. Um, but when you realize that you're connected to other people, but then also your family, it that changes the dynamic of it. And it also it should change how you show up.
Yeah,
Right. So that legacy list lets you know that I'm not doing this just for me. I'm doing it for the people connected to me and the people that's going to come behind me.
exactly. I mean, I remember when I was younger, and whenever I go to school or something, my mama and my daddy would be like, "Remember, you're representing us."
Yes,
When you
ma'am.
leave this house, you're representing us. So don't act up today.
You are absolutely right.
And I think of like I liken that with God as well. Like God's like, listen, you're representing me. You go into this world.
That is facts.
You need to show up and represent this unit very well today. So don't disappoint the unit.
Yes,
My
yes.
husband does that now too. He'll be like, Carla, yeah, we're not looking good as a unit when you do that. Okay. So it just keeps reminding me, like, okay, it's all about legacy,
Yeah.
There's a legacy connected to you, to your your worldly family and your spiritual family.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Carla, for this conversation. Like literally, you blessed me with this conversation this morning. To just really put some things in order for myself. Like I said earlier, God knows who I need to talk to on the days I need to talk to them. And I definitely want to have another conversation with you about purpose for profit. And so y'all tune in because we're gonna set up something else to have a separate conversation about that because what we are doing right is that we are intentionally talking to women of faith who want to walk in their god-given purpose, and there's so many things that come up from that I think that having that conversation um it's long overdue.
And I appreciate this platform, Felicia, because you are freeing some women, like just freeing women so that they can finally just, feel empowered to say, okay, yeah, I could do this. I had that doubt, but I'm gonna slay
Yes,
it
ma'am.
despite that. And I really love that you're providing this platform. It's so needed.
Thank you so much. So how can people connect with you?
So I am on Instagram on push into purpose underscore. And also, my podcast is called Push into Purpose, and you can find that on any podcast stream that you listen to. In addition to that, my book, Proverbs 31 Woman, More Than the Good Wife, can be purchased from Amazon. And then my website is I am Carla George.
Thank you so much, Carla. All of that will be in the show notes, you guys. You already know that. So you can find all that information. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. This was definitely an important conversation that we needed to have. Thank you for what you're doing to be able to have women walk boldly in their God-given purpose because we need more of that, sis. We need more of that.
Yes, we're doing it together. So I'm
Yes.
grateful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, y'all, that's all for this week. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to share, subscribe, rate, and review. Remember to head over to Facebook and Instagram and follow me at Slaying Self Doubt. Oh, wait, don't forget, go to my YouTube channel and watch this episode. And remember to press the subscribe button. Until next week, see ya.